And YouTube, 2 million
Yeah.
subscribers, 88 grand a year.
No, YouTube CPMs, I mean, they've always been the best, I think,
Correct.
for the most part. They're not thinking about the end result. They're not thinking about the keywords. They're not thinking about the script. They're not thinking about the SEO show notes. And why? Because they're not specialists. They don't have time to go into these details. So still asking the question, what does this have to do with repurposing? The point of repurposing is to maximize the content.
Welcome to the Growth Blueprint, the podcast where B2B executives get the insights they need to scale profitable companies. I'm your host, Mario Peshev, analyzing data from over 500 portfolio companies, interviewing top B2B experts, and writing the new playbooks that work. If you're a B2B leader looking to drive growth and operational efficiency, you're in the right place. No fluff, just data-driven insights, expert advice you can act on today. Hit subscribe, stay tuned, let's dive in. Hey everyone, Mario Peshev from the Growth Blueprint. It's a great pleasure for me to announce this great episode here with Ryan Sullivan, founder of Podcast Principles. Hey Ryan, how are you doing?
Hey Mario, what's going on, man? Good to see you.
Absolutely, always a pleasure. So, full disclosure, this is one of the first episodes of the Blueprint, and we're testing out this new format out there, and you're the expert on podcasts. And one of the reasons I want to chat with you first is because podcasts are becoming a thing. And after 10 years of postponing that decision for myself, I finally decided to go bigger on YouTube. We actually grew from like 500 subscribers to 1,300 or so in a matter of 2 months. And we are going big on this one. And I'm pretty sure this is going to be one of the key channels for, all sorts of B2Bs out there. And the reason I'm pretty bullish on that actually is AI. So I'm going to let you chat about AI a little bit in a while. But one of the things that made a great impression for me is that you had Chris Walker on your podcast. Tell me a bit about that first.
Yeah, Chris is a great guy. By the way, there's other Chris Walkers. So shout out to Chris Walker in real estate, who is one of our clients, different Chris Walker. But shout out to both Chris Walkers. But the B2B marketing Chris Walker was on our show, and he dropped a lot of gems. One of them being this kind of rise of the founder and like how the founder's life kind of changes and adapts to the business and vice versa. So we didn't talk about B2B on that podcast, right? And that's because I ran a cultural podcast. So I would take somebody like Chris Walker who never talks about his personal life and then ask him about his personal life, right? So that's a podcast tactic that you can use where if you start talking about people's personal lives and they don't have a following or audience, then nobody's going to care about that. But if you have somebody like him with hundreds of thousands of followers, people are interested, right? So now you're tapping into a vein that hasn't been tapped, right? So that's just one example. But overall, yes, great guest. If you type in Chris Walker, Bopcast, Bopcast, you'll find it. The show's name has changed now, but if you type that in, you'll find the episode.
I'll definitely drop it after the show is live. And one thing I want to mention about Chris and about what you discussed right now with regards to podcast is, first off, we are talking about the Chris Walker of Peshev and Refine Lab. So everyone who's being confused, if you're in the B2B space, I'm pretty sure you are seeing his bob head showing up every now and then on LinkedIn, or it's funny because you said you were discussing some personal things, and I've been watching Chris Doe on the Future podcast just this weekend, and some other kind of famous figures, influencers, and they were talking about things that they're not their core specialty, like Peter Levels on things that are not bootstrapping SaaS. It's really interesting to dive into the lives of famous people and understand what sits behind the scenes. This is why I commend you about actually going deeper and dive far further than where the B2B demand gen space or dark social or intent and signals and what everyone else is talking to.
Yeah. Stephen Bartlett's another one. So I just went to a podcast conference and Stephen Bartlett was speaking, and just having that access to like him live for 30 minutes, right? You're not going to get that on a podcast or even on the internet, right? And so you can create these things with a podcast where you can get something deeper than what they're going to have in any given post or an email list. And the real cheat code is the fact that you're just getting access to these people, open access, right? Like there's not much I'm going to hold back on this interview, right? So it's as if you're getting like, in a sense, a coaching call or consulting call. You're getting all of the ideas, And there's so many different things that you could do with that. So I don't have to sell you on it, but it is very powerful.
I love it. And once again, I'm going to make sure that this is reaching as many people as possible. And there are definitely some great nuggets that I want to discuss with you over here. One of the things that I really want to touch on is podcasts are becoming more powerful. And the reason I believe they are so powerful indeed is AI. With the evolution of AI, there are so many different tools like VDIO or other generators of virtual avatars and 11 Lab generating audio content, and so many people trying to regurgitate existing content, take existing blog posts, turn them into audio files, and just poke them into podcasts or show, especially when it comes to video. But that lack of authentic content is showing up, and it's something that's really going to ruin lots of people's brands. And people simply shouldn't do that. And everyone else who's trying to do podcasting is either giving up too early or just not doing the right things. So first and foremost, with regards to B2B, I'm pretty sure both of us are on the same page. B2B should run their own podcast. Chris Walker is one of the people who's advocating for that and is attributing a good chunk of his revenue to podcasts. So are other people. I'm in a group with Neil Patel and Derek Sue, their agency owners Accelerate. They also have accomplished quite a lot through their marketing school podcast. We were just on a webinar last week, and I'm always impressed as to the power of being personal and being, again, genuine in front of other people. So for B2Bs that are not investing in podcasts, let's say I'm a grumpy executive who does not believe in podcasts. This is some hippie pod game. Back in the day, we had radio and newspapers, and now there's podcasts. So what is your normal pitch to people you see like in real life on why are podcasts a thing and why should every B2B have a podcast?
Well, on that note, right, if you don't believe in it, it's not going to work. So it could still work even if you don't believe in it, but then you would have to have other people who believe in it. But you know the deal. You need founder buy-in for anything that's going to work for the most part, right? Or CMO buy-in, but for the most part, founder has to buy in. So here's a scenario, right? Say there's a B2B company. They have been, the reason why they're successful is the reason why they don't believe in the podcasting and organic content, right? Because they are so successful at direct response, email, cold, whatever it might be, flyers. I mean, if you're doing radio, then you probably already believe in podcasting, but say traditional media, I mean, mail, right? The mail works, right? So, dentists are sending me mail every week, right? Their local dental office. They don't do that because it just for fun. It works. So the thing is, when this is a mindset shift that has to happen, and if you are a founder that has been successful with different types of marketing, then you do have to break a limiting belief, and that's where a vendor comes in, right? That's why I hire outside vendors to do things, because I have limiting beliefs about the capacity for automation within my company, right? Because I might be like, well, we have a hands-on approach and we're boutique and we're high touch, whatever. But those are excuses, right? And so I can't see past that boundary. So when the business automation specialist comes in as a vendor, they don't have any of those limiting beliefs. So from a B2B standpoint, it's not the fact that you're going to hire an outside company, then they're going to help you make a podcast and poof, it's going to work. It's that you now have broken that belief in your company forever. And now you've opened up the door to, in this case, organic content, which in English means posting on social media, and then people come to you. Sounds really kind of just like fairy tale, but it is just reality, right? We get 90% plus of our leads from LinkedIn, and that's because we haven't gone to other platforms because we're maxing out LinkedIn first and then moving, right? But coming back to that point, like, yeah, it's a belief system thing, and that's okay, right? And also, the good thing about this is you don't have to do it. Your competitors are going to do it, right? So there's probably somebody's going to be the podcast in that market, and it doesn't have to be you. And as long as you're okay with your competitors doing it, then your prospects are going to listen to them. How do I know this? Well, that's because my literal clients have told me that they sent their prospects to other people's podcasts, and then the prospects bought from those people, right? So when you have a guest on your podcast, it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody thinks Mario is cool. I'm getting the spotlight here. I'm the one answering the questions, right? So somebody may come to Mario and say, hey man, can you connect me with Ryan? And then Mario goes, wait, why didn't they want to buy from me? Well, you just showcased this person, right? So there's so much to this kind of podcasting organic content, but it all comes back to psychology, human behavior, and essentially belief systems.
I'm a big believer of everything you said here, and just the prominence of being on a podcast is paying off big time. But when it comes to the buy-in from the founder or the CEO, what we're seeing for the most part, and again, I'm speaking on behalf of my agency, Devrix, for example, whenever we offer something that's hard to measure, hard to quantify, let's say infrastructure updates, or rebuilding a system for performance or scalability or so, it's almost like security, right? Security is important, but until you get hacked, you don't really appreciate it as much, right? When you get hacked and when you get sued for like 15 million, then you wish you had ever spent these 500,000 and never ever bothered about anything related to security. But in the meantime, you say, well, is that really needed? Like, is it something that we need and so forth? So, working with executives for the most part, this is why performance-based marketing, this is why PPC is so prominent and so forth. It's just easier to touch. You see return on ad spend, you see pretty much all of the pies are pretty notable and pretty easy to recognize, unlike things like podcasting, which once again seem more ethereal and something that you cannot really touch. So one of the stats that I normally mention when it comes to podcasts, and I may get the number butchered right now, but in order to be in the top 1% of podcasts, you need to have, 21 episodes, I think, or 27 or so. Around that. And, whenever you cross that, you're automatically in the top number of podcasts out there. And the fact that there are so many businesses that are making a fortune or attribute success to podcasts, and it's so easy to be in the top 1%, is almost a no excuse not to start and not to go through these 21 episodes and just keep grinding and dominating the space.
Yeah, I mean, but you're saying top 1% of episodes, right?
Yeah, of course.
Top 1% of downloads. Yeah. So, just to make that clear, there's but also just to piggyback, you don't have to have a lot of downloads for it to be successful, right? So there's that too.
Yeah, and it's pretty similar to organic content. You mentioned that you're getting most of the business through LinkedIn. This used to be one of our main channels from 2017 to 2021, 2022. Right now with reach, it isn't. And the only way to get reach for us is essentially building viral content, which is not really resonating with our audience. So virality is not everything. And I'm also going to kind of piggyback on Walker's own content. But, it's both him and kind of other creators and podcasters, and Neil as well, Eric too, is clickbait content is getting eyeballs, but it's not converting. However, when you tap into your ICPs, your main problems, what they're really struggling with, their pains, their desires, you don't get so many eyeballs, but you normally get clients.
Yeah, we've experienced the same exact thing. Every single thing is down except for revenue.
Tell me some success stories with that, like specific episodes that didn't get lots of downloads, but generated lots of business already.
Yeah, I mean, we could make that split. I mean, I can talk about us first, and then I can move to a client example. But yeah, I mean, we're at, about 1,000 subs on YouTube. Doesn't really matter. I mean, we appreciate all the subscribers, but I'm saying like the quantities doesn't matter as much. What we do is we don't spend more than 1 to 2 hours a month creating content. And so the good thing about that is it's the most efficient way to create content. Because when you just do text, right, a lot of times what a ghostwriting company will do, right, for example, when they say, we're going to help you generate leads from LinkedIn with organic content, they're going to sit you down and they're going to kind of interview you to come up with ideas for their content, right? We just make that interview a podcast too. So now we've filled the spectrum, right? So what's the alternative? The alternative could be, well, I'm going to make short form videos. Well, why would I do that? Well, LinkedIn has a new video feed, Instagram is video, TikTok is video, YouTube is video, Facebook is video. Okay, well, the internet's video, that's undeniable. Okay, so now we have to make videos, right? Okay, great. So now how are we going to do it? Well, we could make 30 TikToks. Those are short form. Short form equals short term. That TikTok, you can post it 2 or 3 times and then it's over. It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't do anything. The long form is long term, right? So that's why we do it this way. So when people say, have you added an extra 6 figures with your podcast? Well, yes, because our podcast is 90% of the content, right? So like, it's just, even if it doesn't get a download, it still will bring in a client, right? So that's the good part about it. That's on the agency side. On the client side, I mean, we have many examples, but one of our biggest shows is in the insurance industry, and they have 100,000 downloads. It's a co-hosted show once a week, never skipped a week, and they get 75% of their leads from the podcast. It's called Wealth Warehouse if you want to look it up. And I've interviewed them and asked them, and they said it's the most productive hour of their week, right? So that's just what they say. And I have many, we interview almost all of our clients. So if you want more on that, you can head over to our channel too.
Oh, that's amazing, and I love it. And I'm going to share some stories with regards to video recording. But before that, because you mentioned TikTok and short attention span, I'm going to screen share real quick here, and let me just drop it here. This gal Erica, who is apparently super popular, and I'm pretty sure that most people, especially the Gen Zs and kind of the younger generation, know her. I saw her like a month ago or so through a long form interview with Seth Godin. So
Nice.
I had never heard of her. She's getting like millions of followers and all that stuff. But, Seth was the reason I saw her. So there's also the other combination of, you may be super popular in a specific community. When you invite guests, you suddenly tap into their audience. And that's how you kind of attract and kind of grow your circle of influence, which is very important. But the one thing I want to mention here, and that's kind of why I'm screen sharing, is she's pretty transparent about her revenue. And the interesting thing is she has over 9 million followers on TikTok and makes $1,000 a year, which is hilarious. When you think about short form and all the creators that are doing stuff there, you immediately realize that TikTok is not really a revenue channel. It's not something that you can monetize, not something you can make money off of. And that's why it's kind of still primarily...
I would say, we have examples that are the opposite. We have people who have made $5,000 in a week off one viral video. So, it could be revenue, but not for an agency, right? You have to make this distinction, which is really important. And I totally agree with your point that you're about to make. I'm just saying, there's a business brand and there's an influencer brand, right? The people who we're talking to are business brands, people like what me and you both do, and probably most of the audience. That means you use your content to sell something else ultimately. What you're looking at with Erica is an influencer brand. Her product is the content, right? So that's just a distinction that we make. That's with our group coaching. That's with every single client. When we come in, we determine which one they want to be. And sometimes when they get to us, they didn't realize that they actually do want millions of followers. And then I say, hey, we really appreciate it. We're probably not the right firm for you. You're probably looking more at a talent agency, right? Or something like that. But I just figured I should jump in there and clarify.
Yeah, totally. And we are also overseeing over, I would say, $7 million monthly of PPC spend. And part of that's actually going to TikTok. And particularly for DTC brands, it's extremely popular and very successful, especially for drop shipping and some other areas. So again, I'm painting with a broader brush, and you're absolutely right. But when it comes to attention, the reason this is not making so much, and the reason that TikTok's algorithm isn't appreciating followers that much, is, again, short attention span, inability to upsell better, to land sponsor deals, and all that. So just in comparison, Facebook with half the number of followers has 11,000, which is still not dramatically impressive, but it's half the followers and 13 times or so more per year. And then Instagram is not monetizable, apparently. And YouTube, 2 million subscribers, 88 grand a year.
No, YouTube CPMs, they've always been the best, I think.
Correct.
For the most part.
And
makes sense.
What's the rationale behind that? The thinking is that revenue is not coming from YouTube or TikTok directly. It's a revenue share based on sponsorship deals and based on advertising. And it only goes to show that YouTube is attracting the higher ticket, audience and people who are ready to buy with their wallets, and not just teenagers and youngsters and everyone else. And this should be one of the buying signals for B2Bs, that sleeping on the YouTube trend is missing out on revenue opportunities.
Yeah. I mean, people use YouTube similarly to how they use Google, which is, say, for this context, right? An agency, I would, as an agency owner, I would type in how to get started. I would type in B2B Google Ads strategy, right? I'm not going to type that in on Spotify. I'm going to type that in on YouTube. Now, on Spotify, I'm going to type in YouTube ads. Then I'm going to find a show that takes me through, episode by episode. And by the way, I wouldn't listen to something like that, but people do, right?
Yeah.
So it's all about context. So to your point, Mario, it's being there, right? When people search. And if you're not there, then they can't find you. And it's really that simple.
One of the caveats, once again, with starting a podcast, or one of the obstacles that we see with B2B, is because on the agency side, again, and in my advisory as well, we do a lot of go-to-market. And in most cases, we recommend our customers to diversify, particularly over the past year. Many of them have been spending, 5 million on Google ads and having other unprofitable ads opportunities. And we say, look, you have to kill 90% of that and then distribute that to, again, starting a podcast, or building a Slack community, or email courses, whatever it is. But there are definitely better ways to capture and kind of build a stronger connection with your audience, and capture first party data ideally, or have subscriptions that are not wasted. And by wasted, I mean the fact that just today, by the way, I have over 20,000 followers on LinkedIn, and I know you have a kind of a similar count. I posted something that's normally not necessarily in the viral count, but a catchy hook and like an image with a top 10 or so. It goes into the list of things that normally do well, or at least did last year. And I had 22 likes, 17 comments and stuff, and I had 340 views. Now, why is that important? Just like Facebook page likes in 2016 were essentially made obsolete, just like SEO was made obsolete last year with the helpful content update, you can really not trust anyone unless you have first party data. So what you can trust is an email, and for the most part, there are spams and stuff, a phone number for text messages, an account in a Slack community, a subscriber who voluntarily and just said, I need to ring the notification bell and click and subscribe, and I'm going to get a backlog of other episodes and stuff. And podcasts, especially subscriptions, are falling into that bucket.
Yeah, I mean, intent signals, right? That's what Chris Walker would say, which that's what we advise all of our hosts to do. I tell them, I'm like, especially in the first year or two, if you're starting a podcast and also selling something, a service or a product, what you're looking for is not as much sheer quantity of downloads or numbers. It's more so the signals, right? So when if in the way we do it, for example, the podcast does become 90% of your content, then you should have comments about it, right? And so those are the signals that you can look for. Those are the people who are hot, right? Those are the people who are warm. Not as much like, oh, well, we got, 24 downloads on this one and 15. Okay, well, that's good. It shows you something. But yeah, to your point, that going deeper, right? And doing, it's a lot of one-on-one, but at the end of the day, we don't serve that many clients every year, right? So we can handle it. But yeah, I mean, that's why we have a school community. That's why I have a group coaching program too, because if I basically have a group of beta testers, and they don't mind, right? And I'm telling them like, hey, here's this new, they're getting everything first, before we roll it out, So it's just another thing to think about.
Your coaching community should be public on your website. I know you have a coaching button out there, but the
website's outdated. We're redoing it as we speak.
Well,
yeah, I started the group coaching program after one person on a discovery call asked for it, and then we sold it out in 2 weeks. Off of a Google Doc. So that's how that one came together.
It makes a ton of sense, and we can chat about the website and the structure later. But all I can say is, whenever I'm talking to B2B executives, CMOs, COOs, CEOs, founders, board directors, investors, I'm always surprised in how reluctant many of them are to learn new stuff. And personally, I'm spending, at least 80 grand, probably over 100 grand a year on, again, coaching programs, masterminds or access to like paid communities and stuff. I mentioned the agency accelerator with Neil Patel and Eric Sue. Matt McGrath's kind of email class, and like in a bunch of other that are just enriching me through mm, networking with relevant communities and with groups of people who do excel at what they do. The marketing ops community, kind of a platinum member or whatever it is, listening and seeing the problems that marketing operators are facing on a daily basis, challenges they have with HubSpot and Salesforce and Marketo and all that. And it's the most valuable part of my journey. And for anyone who isn't subscribed to strategic newsletters or catching up on podcasts and shows, they definitely need a lot of support and a lot of help hand holding from other knowledgeable people like you and I in that case on the nitty gritty on specific opportunities on how to properly monetize. And kind of another example is kind of up until early last year, about 90% of our agency requirements, like all sorts of RFPs and stuff, were for R&D work. They were for building partner portals, integrating like specific complex Salesforce dashboard and stuff. And ever since the crash in the B2B SaaS space happened, and after a few months of layoffs, 70% of all RFPs were, hey, the vast majority of our leads were coming from SEO or organic or PPC. And this channel is dead. We haven't seen a single lead in like 4 months. We are desperate. We need an immediate change. This shift happened almost overnight, right? It was over the course of a few months, but everyone was shocked and expecting for something to reverse itself. But the reality is that B2B executives are often so vastly unprepared and not really ready if their main demand generation channel dries out. And they're not even ready to attribute the success to that, because you mentioned signals and intent, and people see them at events, podcasts, YouTube shows, webinars, and they see an organic form field and they say, oh, it's SEO, or hey, it's probably a paid ad. And they don't even add a single, hey, how did you find us field on their contact form, which is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, that's your world, man. I get you, though. I get you.
One of the things that I'm really curious about is again, one of the core obstacles that we see from executives when we discuss starting a show or a podcast channel or so, they say, well, it's an organic channel similar to, let's say, SEO. It takes 18 to 24 months to ramp up and start and whatnot. And even with SEO, I tell them, look, yes, that's true. The organic results are going to come after 2 years. But there's so much you can do with your content. And with that in mind, how are your clients leveraging videos and audio files to distribute further for their network? Give B2Bs a few tips of how they can make use of these files instead of waiting for 2 years for that to organically ramp up.
Yeah, social media, right? The social media is instant. It automatically goes to people. It's actually incredible. It's amazing. So that's what we optimize for. So we'll help, say, a founder, if there is a founder or CMO who is a little bit more outgoing or has the personality or just wants to be recording content, right? We're going to essentially turn their conversations into a podcast. So we're going to take them and enable them to use basically conversations they would already have that could be co-hosted with somebody else in the company, right? I will, if you want to, we can talk about interview shows, but in this case, I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is there's two different companies. One of them is your company. One of them is my company, and we're competing. And I have a ton of videos. I have a ton of short form videos, long form videos, podcasts. And basically every time you log into LinkedIn, you see one of my videos. Versus your company is we just do updates. We just, post on the website. We're posting blogs, right? All of this stuff is useful, but outdated, right? So it's that simple. It's just about doing what you're not doing. It's really that easy. And then you get instant results, meaning that we take the way that we script and create that video and put it together will determine the results. And then you cut clips from that. That becomes 90% of your content. The key to all video content is copy. It's not the video, at least on LinkedIn. So in that case, we teach copywriting frameworks, and then boom. Now we have instant results, feedback, signals, leads, whatever. The leads will take a little bit longer, but at least you're getting human beings watching this stuff. And for your blog is going to sit there and it's not going to get a comment. You're not going to see the people. But on social, it's the opposite. You get instant feedback essentially. And that's what our hosts are seeing.
LinkedIn recently featured their TikTok style feed, and I know that you're using that heavily. I started with video the moment they introduced it in 2016 or 2017. I was posting heavily back then, and honestly, right now I have reach problems. Back then, uploading anything was getting 5 to 10,000 views. It was going viral on autopilot. It was extremely successful. It was actually making money. I couldn't crack YouTube. Now, this is my probably third or fourth attempt here, but LinkedIn video was extremely strong. And the reason I'm mentioning that once again, as I expect the same to happen with that shorts feed or the TikTok style feed that they have right now, because once again, video is the future. Depending on how you look into that, but it's the way you build personalization. It's the way you build stronger connections. It takes fewer hoops for other executives and partners and vendors to understand first how you think, and then build a stronger connection than just seeing a face for a second and a half on social media. But the way I started back then is I was recording like a 30-minute video show. I was slicing it, and that was again 8 years ago. I was slicing it into like 4 different videos, very low quality, nothing like what you do. Again, you're in the professional camp, and definitely for anything professional, people should work with you. But slicing it into like a 7-8 minute video, extracting that to a podcast, and then using the transcription for blog posts and social copy. I was spending, and again, our team was 10 people. Now it's close to 50, and they have 4 other companies and other things. I was spending about 10 hours a week on doing all that, and this amplified my business and kind of gave the launch pad for other businesses started thanks to that. Let's dive deeper into that. Again, there's so much more you can do with a video. It's not a static box object that you upload on on Spotify or YouTube, and it just dies in there. What are the most creative ways to repurpose a video heavily into so many different formats?
Yeah, I mean, starting with the video, as you said, so that's going to get cut up. What we do, if you want to, it's pretty obvious how to repurpose stuff, but the hard and fast kind of rules that you need to know are the more you repurpose it, the worse it gets typically, right? So meaning a copy of a copy of a copy is worse than the original, right? So there's that aspect to it. But when it comes to what to do with this content, right? There's 2 things you need. You need creation and you need curation. So if you have a social media manager, right? Typically this person they don't deliver results because they're managers, right? Managers are not leaders. They're 2 different types of people, right? So you need somebody to lead the content, right? So that is the creator. So that could be the founder, the CMO. It has to be somebody who knows what the hell they're talking about, subject matter expert. Then you have the curation side. That's where these, 10, 15 person marketing teams, they're being replaced by founder, social media director, maybe, and then 1 virtual assistant, right? And these people are going to be able to do what teams of people used to do. And right now it's happening. I mean, and then they're going to bring in vendors like us who are specialists to just build out the podcast, right? So it's in the next 3 to 5 years, companies are going to be cutting the fat. They're going to start paying a lot of money for specialist talent instead of having the quantity of humans. So, but what does that mean for repurposing? Well, what that means is you're going to when you hire an expert, right? That person, they get to say a vendor, right? We've worked on 200, 300 shows, for example, probably more. When you hire an employee, they've only worked with 4 or 5 companies. They don't have a lot of experience. They have years, but they don't have a lot of experience, right? So that when somebody like that advises you, say, to create a podcast, they're not thinking about the end result. They're not thinking about the keywords. They're not thinking about the script. They're not thinking about the SEO show notes. And why? Because they're not specialists. They don't have time to go into these details. So still asking the question, what does this have to do with repurposing? The point of repurposing is to maximize the content. that should not sacrifice the main piece of content, right? So what that means is how you look at your podcast episode before you record it, that's going to determine how good the repurposing is. Meaning, when you have a AI tool, right, that says we created 20 clips in 10 seconds, that doesn't matter, because the only thing that matters is how good is the clip, right? So to come back to the beginning, it's who is making the content and then how are they making it? Yes, a podcast can do the myriad of things. It does it for us. It does it for everybody else. We're not even fully taking advantage of every single thing podcasting can do because it takes time. But in reality, it only comes back to that source content. How good is that actual episode on paper, right? And so if you want to make this easy, if you want to accelerate this process, or you want to do it in-house, instead of making your interview show where you interview random people that nobody really knows, thus nobody will care, that's why nobody will listen to it. Maybe instead you do a co-hosted episode with somebody in your business, a partner, somebody adjacent, and then you're making that episode only to create clips from it, right? In that case, you just did it with the end in mind. And it's not that the source content's going to be bad. It's not that nobody's going to listen. It's that when you go ahead and post that clip, it actually gets, our clips get thousands of views on LinkedIn, right? Because we do it in this way. And our clips generate leads because we do it in this way. So when we talk repurposing, I don't look at it. We have a framework for repurposing, and I'll give you the quick synopsis, which is it has nothing to do with editing and repurposing and transcripts, and it has everything to do with the source content, and we have a framework that we use for that. And so I've kind of done a little bit of a flip, so to say, on repurposing and squeezing the juice out of your content. It matters much more the actual source rather than hey, can we get 16 clips from this?
I think you need to coin a new term. That's not repurposing, but it's like fueling the repurposing engine or something like that.
Oh, trust me, I'm working on it. I'm trying to figure out what it is. But yeah, repurposing is it's basically nothing now because it could be anything, right? I mean, you could flip a coin, you could pay for something with a coin, or you can scratch off the lottery ticket. All right, is that repurposing?
It's definitely a good way to look into that. But yeah, what we're seeing kind of in using both videos and all sorts of content is we heavily rely on all of our external content, which is, again, videos, my content on Forbes, Entrepreneur, Inc. magazine, and kind of all the other vectors, and kind of using all of that as part of the funnel, right? Our email courses get enriched with this content. My newsletters, we use the video embeds in there to keep traction back and forth, and we kind of cross promote from video to newsletter, newsletter to video to LinkedIn to like across other channels depending on where people are. I use these in automation sequences for leads who reached out and we had an intro call and then they ghosted, right? And in 1 out of 3 times when I send 5 outreach sequences and I send a case study, I send a video, I send a podcast, I send an interview with someone else, in 1 out of the 3 outreach sequences, they get back. And the reason that's important for B2Bs is both for BDRs and sales dev reps and founders, executives, CMOs, everyone else, the fact that your outreach sequence isn't something that generates significant results is oftentimes a byproduct of first limited brand affinity and brand awareness due to the fact that you're essentially nowhere to be found. And second, due to the fact of not connecting those assets that you already have in a meaningful and significant way to keep enriching your prospects up until they become actual qualified leads.
Yeah, man. Yeah. We're on the hook for the education, right? Like, and that comes back to that point. There's a large. It's the fact is you're successful. That's your problem, right? It's that, hey, we're successful, so then we hired a founder looks at it and goes, wait, it's only $1,000 a month for a marketing assistant? Okay, they're just going to do our content for us. Look, amazing. that's ruining everything. That's ruining all of the lead generation. That's ruining your outbound, right? So like it's ruining your inbound, it's ruining your outbound. It's like it's all side effects. So yeah, I mean, it just adds on to that point of like when you go ahead and do this thing, like there's a reason why companies pay a lot of money to hire specialists. You know what I'm saying? Because they know that the effectiveness of that, even that sequence for somebody that's cold is determined by the background image on your LinkedIn profile. Fully. That plus 1,000 other micro details that you need to nail, right? So if your podcast logo looks like it was designed either in Fiverr or on Canva, it's over. But you're making you're doing 20 million top line, so you don't think about that, right?
It's hard to convince someone who's making 8 figures that their brand looks like crap, because they say, well,
I know exactly.
But
yeah,
we do see that quite a lot. We work with a business making 85 million a year, and we did rebuild their website recently, and we pitched them a kind of better design, and it went through several executives, and it doesn't look good anymore.
Yeah,
that's the reality. Yep. So when it goes to people,
I see what you're saying. Yeah. Same thing for content, right? I mean, but that's like saying that I have hair, so I'm good at I can cut hair. Like no, like I have a nice car, so I know about cars. Like no, it's not like it was the fact that it's what got you here won't get you there, right? But no, it is, man. It is hard. I mean, listen, if you're listening to this, you've already made it. You already have the self-awareness, right? But for some reason, yeah, the buck stops at content. It's like, oh, we'll hire people for everything else except this social, except yes. Why should the CFO should never, not never, but the CFO should not have a real say in the website, right? It's like sure, it's influenced in some way or another, but yeah, I mean, that comes back to how do you make decisions, right? I mean, you can go as broad with this as you want.
One of the things that are often left unnoticed over the past few months is the dramatic shift in not just B2B, but globally, right? We had the pandemic and the major recession. Silicon Valley Bank went under, high interest rates, high mortgage rates. Again, major layoffs everywhere, like so many different things. FTX, went to jail, and like Binance founder too. Like so many couple wars in kind of Europe and the Israel region, like in Gaza, and that led to a lot of scarcity and limited attention, meaning that most of the businesses are afraid to invest, and this led to the suppression of kind of pumping up new capital. And when you add the adoption of AI, the vast augmentation pretty much everywhere, what we see is, first off, a major influx of founders going to LinkedIn, going to YouTube and other channels, just because of that thought leadership and founder-led branding is getting so much more important. And all the deep fakes and AI outreach is getting so cheaper that it's hard to capture attention. So that's kind of one of the things. And second, a lot of the CEOs are going back to the trenches. One example is Larry Page or Gabe Brin from Google. When they saw what's happening with ChatGPT, they went straight into the Google HQ and started organizing 24/7 meetings there, right? And they're not the only leaders in Fortune 500 with the major layoffs or acquisitions, like Broadcom bought VMware, and like they were doing major layoffs in augmenting stuff. McKinsey, Accenture are invested everywhere in trying to do augmentation. CEOs are deep in the trenches right now, but they're not staying in the loop on what actually sells and what works, and they're not working with the right vendors. So this is why we see higher utilization of agencies, but at the same time, that's with the scrutiny of we don't understand how that works, and we can't assess it, we can't calculate it, we can't put it on the financial plan. And then CFOs come in and say, wait, this doesn't make sense for the budget. We just need to start cutting everything down.
Yeah, there you go. No, you brought it back, man. It's true.
Well, what can I say? One of the things that I can say that worked for us on the agency side is getting entry-level offers that just develop trust and normally cost like 5% of what we normally charge, but also offer 3% of what we normally offer, right? And this is just easier to pass by the CFO and easier to just solve a tiny little problem and then solve another one and then be the Trojan horse to the actual business.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's great. In our end, it's the same. I mean, that's why we have a group coaching program, and we will have your employee join our program, right? We don't want you to hear it from us. We want the employee to go and tell you what it's really like. Well, yeah, they had me on the call, and then you know what? They did a 1-hour Q&A. I showed up and I asked like 5 questions, and I was like, it was me and 2 other people, and I basically got like free coaching. And then look, I got all these resources too. I got so many resources, I don't even know where to start. And so that's just, it's so true, Mario, because you have to have these, like you said, yeah, like I don't even, back to the terms, right? Low ticket's not even, it doesn't really give you the full scope of what it is. What it is, it's a trial, right? Like it's a trial offer. It's saying, hey, come on into our world, see how we work, right? Take a look at these resources. Are they valuable? Are they not? You know, how to turn, clients into podcast episodes or salespeople or whatever, right? Whatever the resource is. And yeah, that's especially for high ticket B2B. The low ticket is going to sell the high ticket when done correctly, right? And it's going to, which it should, everybody talks about, is shortening the sales process. Okay, you want to get a deposit and then sell them 6 months later, or do you want to turn that deposit into a monthly quote unquote deposit and just have one of your employees join a coaching program? And now 6 months later, when you actually start, well, we've already got a quarter of the work done. Yeah, man, I can go, I'm really super bullish on that. And I didn't know I was doing it while I was doing it, but now all of our retainer clients are like, hey, can we like join your, the group? You know what I'm saying? And, yeah, they want to hear us talk for 30 minutes a week about some little podcasting tactic,
I love it. And I definitely believe this is the way, and trends are changing so quickly right now, but we definitely know for a fact that what worked in 2022 is not working in 2024. It just isn't. And that's why we're moving to founder-led. That's why we're moving to sales reps are no longer closing. That's why we're moving to Google Ads is not generating the proper ROAS, which Chris is often talking about. That's why, all investors pushed for profitability and kind of year of efficiency and not just growth at all cost. And all of those low ticket funnels are something that personally, and again, I've always been high ticket. I've always been enterprise, boutique level, high ticket. It was a hard shift for me as well, but it's working like crazy. And being in so many communities with, again, other advisors, coaches, mentors, agency owners and stuff, I just see most of them and like the successful one transitioning,
Yeah. And there's that world though where, or the real world where you're like, well, I don't have all the time in the day. Well, you should only be doing what you're really good at, right? You shouldn't be spending 10 hours on the podcast. You should be spending 2, because those 2 hours are the title text, the thumbnail text, or just these high-level decision-making frameworks. I'm not taking myself out of marketing or sales just because I want to. I'm taking myself out of marketing and sales, not completely, but I'm taking out the 8 hours. I'm replacing that 8 hours with what I should be doing best, which is number 1, running the company, and number 2, coaching, consulting, and creating results for people, right? So it all comes back to that. It's like, well, this is going to be a lot of time, dude. Like, this is going to be, that's like a CEO of a surf company, I guess, but like, this is going to be a lot of time. Yeah, it is. Like, it's like, that's what makes this stuff great, right? It's like, I've done 12 weeks. This is our 12th week of our group coaching program. We thought we were only going to do it for 3 months. We now have a wait list. It's like, I had no idea. The market told me. The market told me what was up. But if I didn't break that limiting belief of I don't join groups programs, I want to be here. I don't join Slack groups. I don't have time for that. Now I'm on podcast with Mario because I'm in a Slack group, right? So we'll get a client. I'll get a client. We'll all get clients out of it too, and all the great business things. But yeah, man, it really does come back to the beginning of you got to break down those beliefs.
Love it. Great thoughts. Great final. I think some power nuggets went in out there. The opportunities of podcasts, of Slack communities, of email, of low ticket. So many misconceptions, like myths busted in just 2 minutes. It's just a great short also for food for thought, for a capture, something we should do and post as an upsell. This is going to be our low ticket entry to the long.
Hey, everybody needs a podcast too, for sure. No doubt, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Ryan. Great having you here on the Growth Blueprint podcast. How and where can people find you?
Yeah, man. LinkedIn's my main platform. It's Ryan R. Sullivan. If you use the R, you'll find me. Trying to get SEO on Ryan Sullivan, so we're working on that. A pretty common name. Podcastprinciples.com, as you mentioned, we are updating the site as well. And we have a brand new group coaching program starting in September. If you do want to join that, go ahead. And if you're interested, feel free to hit me up. I'll send you all the deets. And thank you, Mario, for having me, man. Great show. Keep it up, man. Keep podcasting.
Absolutely. We'll definitely do it. Thanks for being here. It was definitely a pleasure. I'm pretty sure I'm going to have you on another episode once you grow your coaching program to another 50,000 people, which is going to happen pretty soon. I'm pretty sure after this episode.
We're getting there. We'll start with 20. Appreciate it.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thanks everyone for being here. If you like the show, please hit like, subscribe, all the notification bells, go and cross them. It's definitely great being here. If you have any follow-up questions for Ryan before you join the coaching group, drop them in the comments here. And if you have any other ideas for episodes or recommendations for folks who should be on the pod, also drop them in the comments and we are going to extend an invite. Thanks for being here and see you next week.